Hello, everyone. This is Raise Your Voice as part of the Fans First Sports Network. I think we are now live on their podcast feeds as you're listening to this, working on a new logo for Raise Your Voice, but we are back on your podcast feeds. And Darby, I'm pretty excited about that.
I'm excited too. It's something new, something fun. I'm excited to check out some of the other content that we're sharing the airwaves with.
Yeah.
Your digital airwaves. I'm excited to have a new home, and I'm excited to hopefully produce some really fun content that people will enjoy, and maybe even have opportunities to hop on some other podcasts, get some like cohabitation here.
I think that's the eventual goal, but good news is if you're listening to this, it means you probably just stayed subscribed or followed to our D-Rays Bay podcast network feed, which housed originally the hit show that was hosted by Darby and Danny Russell. And then Raise Your Voice came on in 2020. It started the year of the pandemic, and also Who's on Worst. So Raise Your Voice will continue to live on this podcast feed, which is being obviously, as you just heard, rebranded, kind of. Who's on Worst, we believe, will be on YouTube. Right, Darby? Is that where our last decision was?
I think we're doing YouTube, and if possible, splitting it onto here. But we will be posting that on YouTube as well as like onto the website as well, onto D-Rays Bay. So you can still catch it pretty much if you were still the normal way as you were listening and following our stuff is probably not going to change too much in your end, but there is a lot of stuff moving behind the scenes on our end, so
Yes.
which is all exciting stuff.
And if you're watching this on YouTube, or you have been, it's still going to continue to be on YouTube. So hope you're enjoying it there. And like Darby said, we'll still be very much a part of D-Rays Bay. But I like adding the video component too. I can sit here. I've got my Rowdies hat on. They got their first one in a few weeks today in Detroit. We've got the Brett Phillips. And then I also have an adult beverage to help get me through this Tampa Bay Lightning game. So it's Team Tampa Bay. The Rays were pretty stressful early on tonight. I do want to talk about tonight's game, the Saturday night's game.
Pretty wild game, yeah.
The Rays were being no hit by Lance Lynn into the seventh inning, and then all of a sudden scored 10 runs.
Yes.
And now they're up 12-3 in the bottom.
A quick and like quiet, a quick and loud 10 runs. Yeah. 9 hits from 0 hits. I mean, I think it really cannot be stressed enough that they were no hit into the 7th inning and then had 10 hits. It started with a Wander Franco opposite field home run on 0-2. So very good piece of hitting right there. Yeah. So there goes the no-hitter. There goes the shutout, but still 3-1. So it's not still Lance Lynn pitching well. The next biggest thing in that thing, because he got Randy Rosarena striking out, was Josh Lowe going down to 0-2. And they talked about it on the broadcast, like he was, every batter is bad 0-2 because that's a very pitcher friendly count. But Josh Lowe was basically impossibly. He was I think batting 0-92 when he fell behind 0-2. This year he's been really good, and this at bat in particular was just, I think that further maturation in his evolution in his game is that he was able to lengthen the swing, get it like into the zone, and be able to just like serve it out into the outfield. It wasn't a very hard hit. It wasn't a very good hit, but it was enough of a hit, got the base hit, and that just basically kept the train moving forward. So got the hit, then everybody else after that, it just started to like snowball. And so that was the kind of the fun thing right there, was that like, again, with this lineup, we talk about it, it's just top to bottom, there's not like a let up. So you got guys like Isaac Paredes who can give you a good at bat. You have guys like Josh Lowe being able to contribute. In that inning, you had you had Paredes come through. You had people like Taylor Walls draw a good walk. You had pinch hitters like Manny Margot and Yandy Diaz contribute. You had Jose Siri come through with a big double. And then when those guys in the bottom of the lineup start to contribute, start to get those hits, then suddenly you then get it back over to the top of the order where Wander Franco had another great at bat, drove in some more runs. Randy Rosarena kind of put a capper on it with a huge home run. And then, of course, Josh Lowe got a home run too. So it was just like even extending it out. But that was it was just the type of inning that this team is capable of, where like they're not out of any game because they could just keep stringing together positive outcomes, a walk, positive, out where you're putting contact on and you're driving in a run and you're forcing the defense to make a play. In that inning, you had an aggressive send that then the White Sox were not able to hold on to the ball and it got loose. So there was a whole lot of things like that where you really could see a game just flip on its head because the team is just constantly putting pressure on it. So impressive inning, very unimpressive season for the White Sox, and it's still April. There was, I think, sell the team chants that were ringing in after that. So rough stuff for the Southsiders, but
Yeah. So about the lineup and everybody contributing, I tweeted out that this team kind of reminds me of the 2009 Yankees when it was just 1 through 9. You were going to get punished no matter who was at the plate. And watching the Rays lineup in that seventh inning tonight really felt like that. The White Sox, however, man, I mean, ever since they hired Tony La Russa, it has been like this was a team I thought that was on the precipice of like becoming a perennial contender with the young core that they had. Then they hired Tony La Russa, which was like a unilateral decision by their owner. And ever since then, it has been awful.
I feel like they were like this young vibes team, right? A lot of young, talented players. A lot of you had Tim Anderson kind of leading the way, Luis Robert, Eloy Jimenez. You had a really cool young core building, and they were a
Jose
very
Abreu.
Jose Abreu. There was a very fun like energy to the team, right? There was a swagger. There was like a lot of fun. There was good vibes. And then you hired Tony, who was like just the worst vibes you could possibly imagine. And then before he even manages the team, he gets into a DUI. And it's like, this is the worst vibe. And then he just was bad. He was just awful. Like, I mean, like Tony La Russa is a Hall of Fame baseball person, as he said. But the game changes, and what worked for Tony, and that's the crazy thing about this is like Tony La Russa was a pretty revolutionary and progressive manager in his era, but unfortunately, age and calcification comes for everybody, and Tony La Russa is not a progressive manager in the year of our Lord 2022.
The founding fathers were progressive in their time.
True, very true. And Tony La Russa was just after them. He I think voted for Madison. That's the problem, is like you had this guy who was like a grandpa coming into this team of like all like young, exciting people, and then you just had that feeling of like, oh, they can't be fun and cool anymore because now they're gonna get in trouble if they're cool, and it awful vibes. And it's just, I feel like continued. I don't know if Pedro Grifol is how. I have no idea if he's a good manager or not, but this team is a sunken ship. Like you had Luis Robert hit a grounder to Calvin Fauché in the first inning, a very tough play by Fauché, who snagged it and then fired to first to catch a very speedy runner who happened to be doing the slowest walk, and he got him by like 5 feet. And like, oh, that's not good. And then Pedro, the White Sox manager, benched him. And so like you just it's April. And like you said, this was a team that was this was the team that was like the team to beat in the Central like 2 years ago. And then last year. And then even coming into this year, they were expected to be loud and exciting.
I think they're the team that you expect to be like in the race, and the Central is not the strongest division by any means. But between them, the Guardians and the Twins, that's who you expect the top three to be. It's been like that for over half a decade now in that division, that the Tigers and the Royals are just kind of playing catch up. But yeah, the bullpen is rough. I know they've got like Tim Anderson is hurt, and Garrett Crochet had Tommy John surgery. Duh. Like, of course that was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, also Liam Hendricks though is dealing with cancer, but he's on his way back. So
which is great. Yeah, he's pitching on the back lot, so that's super exciting. That's awesome. Hopefully he comes back and absolutely dominates.
But yeah, for the White Sox, they're 7-21, right? I mean, it's not looking good for them this year. But let's pivot back towards the Rays. So, of course, a day after we put this podcast out, or maybe it was the same day, Taj Bradley gets sent down after we talked about him. Pretty much for the biggest chunk of last week's episode, how he was going to have a shot to be on the team the whole season. Yes, a bunch of people they scream out, "Oh, it's service time manipulation," but it was pretty clear and well reported on what the Rays' goals were with this demotion. Either that, or that's just what they tell Mark Topkin, and that's what he puts out there. I don't know. Go ahead, Darby. What are your thoughts on the Taj Bradley demotion for at least a little bit?
I think one of the things we talked about this too in the same vein. So everything we talked about Taj Bradley being like exciting and talented and somebody that's here for the long haul is true. But I also think two things can be true. And I think with the Rays and a lot of the content about the Rays, and we talk about this a lot, is that this is a team that fairly consistently people do not give the benefit of the doubt to. Right. So like this type of move, they're a team that has been labeled in equal parts a team that just burns through arms and doesn't care about long-term health, and a team that's going to try to do anything to manipulate like the cap and steal service time here and there. And so when it comes to somebody like Taj Bradley, the idea is he's not been pitching on a 5-day schedule. He's been pitching on a 6-day schedule. That's what the minor leagues tends to do. And that's what he's been pitching in the majors. Today, for instance, I saw some people talking about it because like Calvin Fauché was an opener for Yanni Chirinos, and we can talk about that game, like the performance from Yanni today. But they're looking at that as like, oh, well, too bad we don't have like, Taj Bradley up here instead of like Calvin Fauché. Here's the problem. Taj Bradley wouldn't be pitching today because this is the 5th day. And so the idea is you want to get him ready for that schedule. And I did see some folks questioning why wouldn't it be done in the majors. The team, and Mark Topkin had a really good article in the Tampa Bay Times today, I believe, about, and with good quotes from the team kind of about that process, that you can script it out a lot better in the minor leagues. You don't care about results as much down there. He is going to have to transition back to this new schedule, but you want to do it in a way that keeps him healthy. You want to make sure that they're pitching in some cold weather climates right now. That was a big factor. They don't want to necessarily shorten what they have in the major leagues, because you do have to maybe bring down that workload for those times. And you're now carrying Fleming and Chirinos and Bradley, who they're all kind of bulk. So you're missing that short term. In the meantime, they've kind of used Keith Hembry and then DFA'd him, and then Nick Birdie, and then optioned him. You're cycling through the short arms in between getting to those bulk arms. For Taj Bradley, the plan seems to be he's going to start Sunday which is on his 6th day of rest. So a normal start. And then after that, I think they're scripting it a little bit shorter distance. So you're not going to go as many pitches because he's then going to come back on a day shorter rest, which is the 5th day, which is the standard major league starting resting, which is 4 days of rest, start on the 5th day. He's then going to do that, but probably be another shorter appearance to, again, make sure that you are adjusting the body and not putting that extra strain because it's a new training regimen. People like Drew Rasmussen are actually quoted in the article by Topkin today, talking about that transition, kind of going from a reliever and going from a 6-man rotation in college when he was a starter to the majors to then, kind of making that adjustment. It takes quite a bit. After he does a 5-day, he's then going to probably do another 5-day, maybe a 6th, and then kind of balance that out so that they can build him up and try to get him back to that 80, 90 pitches. It doesn't seem like it'll take that long, but they're going to try to do this in a way that will allow him to be able to build back up, but not rush it. And I think that's the key, right? Is like, yeah, they could maybe just say, okay, you were pitching today, Saturday in Chicago, and we're going to let you go for 80 pitches and see what happens. If he gets hurt, that's hurting his future career. That's reckless. And when you have won as many games as you have right now, you have banked the opportunity to be careful, be cautious, let a couple of bullpen days go to get Taj Bradley, who's just 22 and has a huge, long future ahead of him, to get him ready and prepared in the right way that will keep him healthy.
And another thing that's I think the Rays are doing right now is you look at those back end guys who we talked about last week, your Chirinos, your Fleming, and now Calvin Fauché is being stretched out into a multi-inning guy. You don't want all three of those guys, nor can you really expect all three of those guys to be on your roster in September forward. So let's see what we got in them now. One of them is going to have to, I mean, I guess they could both be sent back down to Durham, or one of them could be sent back down to Durham. But you're probably going to need one of them. You're probably not going to have room for both. And you might need, Chirinos or Fleming for some big innings if there are more injuries, which, if we know how these seasons have gone recently, we can expect some more devastating injuries. And that's what you need to get these guys ready for. So get Bradley stretched back out. It's better for him. It's better for his career. See what you got in Chirinos, Fleming, Fauché, whoever else, Kevin Kelly. And also you're 22-5. Like, you can lose a couple and it's okay.
And on the basis of service time manipulation, I think it's a totally fair thing to be concerned about. And I think it's totally a fair thing to bring up. And it's a kind of problem of baseball's own creation, because the way money works and getting it to players is totally backwards with how baseball actually operates. The primes of players are younger. They're during the years of pre-arb and arb rather than in the free agent years. And because of the fact that the money is flowed towards there, it causes people to rightfully be really concerned when a very talented player is not getting a chance to play, and if there's reasons beyond that. But I also do think that we kind of go too far in the sense of always looking for that, and to the point where it does affect players. Rushing a player up, having them not succeed, it then kind of casts them aside. Somebody like Joe Adell is actually at a perfect age for AAA. He's only 24. He's young and talented, but the fact that he has come up and had about 500 plate appearances in the majors that have been an absolute disaster has basically destroyed his prospect stock. And most people around the league don't really even care. Like, fan wise, they basically see him as a failed prospect and somebody to cast to the wayside. So I think proper development is still important, because it doesn't matter if Joe Adell has an extra year of team control. Nobody's going to want him for that free agent year. Like, the idea is you want to be so good that by the time he gets to those free agent years, you have basically, bought a year. But when it comes to Taj Bradley, man, if he's healthy for 6 years, great. But pitcher health does not really work that way. I don't think the Rays are doing this with service time as a number 1, number 2, or number 3 goal. Now, I think that's going to be potentially an outcome of this, is he might lose a year of service, but he also might not if he comes back up and shoves, and he'll be back up probably within a month. He'll be back up, and then he could get Rookie of the Year votes, which would then give him that service year back. I don't think the Rays are looking at him as somebody that, like, this is the reason to do this. I think there is absolute real baseball reasons. And the number one reason, I think, is because Taj Bradley looked so good, so young, because you then want to move him into the rotation full time. And to do that, you want to then build him carefully for the workload of a full-time rotation. If you thought that he was not going to be here for the whole year, you then don't mind doing some 6-man rotations and then eventually just shuttling them through Durham and just kind of coming up for a spot start here and there. I think what they saw in those first few starts, the first start was entirely just a fill-in for Eflin. Once Springs went down, they gave him a couple more runs. I think he is somebody that they see as like a very high potential future for this team. And at such a young age that he could be starting a postseason game for them this year. And so because of that, they are now pushing the button on, let's get him into the rotation. And to do that, this is what we need to do. Or at least this is what we think we need to do to make it safely get there. I know people are disappointed in not being able to see him pitch. I am too, but he's going to start this process. And if he's not back up by like June, that would be kind of shocking. But I think for May, you give him a few weeks to kind of build this up. I think it's probably about 5 to 6 starts to be able to get there if you're organizing it, possibly as close as 4. But I also think this is an opportunity to build him up. Glasnow will hopefully be back soon. We have we had news on that. And then you see what you can get with, again, Fleming and Yanni as that 5th starter, and hope that one of them, if not both of them, are a usable major league piece. So I think it's the right time to start to do this. It is disappointing. I totally get that. But I think this is done just for service time or as the primary factor. I think it's completely not founded.
Yeah, and I mean it was rules like that where if you receive Rookie of the Year voting was to prevent service time manipulation. Like, there are rules put in place, but it is what it is. I mean, no matter what the Rays do, there will be some people that will criticize them and call them evil, and that's just kind of the way this goes. But yeah, we'll see how they fill out, those innings for now. He could be up in like 2 weeks. Like,
They could be.
Like, it was not like he's going to go down and, pitch here till the All-Star break. It was just, we need to get him built up. And if things go well, he could be back up very soon, especially if Torinos and Fleming really struggle. They've also got to add Javi Guerra tomorrow, so they'll have to make some sort of room. I think they have up to 3 days to do that, though. But
they do
tomorrow. Although you do have tomorrow, then an off day on Monday.
It's possible. I think what we'll probably see, I mean, again, the most likely with options that could fit would be somebody like Calvin Fauché or Yanni Chirinos. Because they both pitched today. Yanni, because you don't need him in the rotation for a while. So he's kind of a dead spot on the roster for a little bit. Right. If you do option him, you cannot bring him back up right away. So he would have to miss at least one turn in the rotation. But you could then do a spot start with like Luis Patino, or maybe if you do want to push the button on like Elvin Rodriguez, who's got some of the best stuff numbers, who's seemingly developing into somebody that you might want in the rotation very soon. So maybe you don't push the 40-man button yet on that one. So yeah, I would imagine it's something like a Yanni going down for Guerra, and you kind of now have a little bit more few shorter guys in the pen. But let's talk about Javi Guerra, because that was an interesting trade. A late convert to pitching. We kind of had him last year. He just started pitching in 2019, and then obviously we always talked about 2020 and 2021 as like complete messes for development. Like some like completely weird minor leagues were canceled and the offsite and not a lot of contact with teams. So really weird stuff. So 2022, he's with the Rays. They acquire him, and the things we know about Javi Guerra is his command is a disaster, which fine. He's the shortstop that just started pitching like a few years ago. But he has a sinker that's high 90s with insane movement that is one of the most filthy pitches in all of baseball. He has no command of it, but it's insanely good. And what we saw with the Rays is he got a little bit better at command. Still wasn't great, but he gets whiffs. If he can develop that, if he can kind of keep that progress going, which honestly, a guy at his age, still only 27, but also brand new to pitching, and that raw stuff, that's somebody that you do want to develop. And if he had an option, that's a guy that I think the Rays would love to keep in Durham and really give like a full year maybe to work on. But he doesn't. And they gave it a chance in the majors, and he showed some flashes. But again, we talked about it, roster crunch time. They traded him. They got an interesting piece from Milwaukee, but now he was DFA'd again. Suddenly there's an opportunity to go out and get him. And what did the Rays do? They went and traded, player to be named later, or cash, for him again, which they've now targeted him twice. When the Rays, again, target pitchers, that makes you think. That makes you do double takes. That makes you do triple takes. And you see what's good there. Milwaukee was starting to move, I guess, to more of a sweep action with his slider, whereas before it actually had more of a drop. So it was more of the tunneling effect with the sinker. I'm curious to see if the Rays go back to saying, we don't want you to add that. We actually want you to just be this sinker slider guy, but with a more gyro slider and then sinker, so that you're basically seeing the same location, the same pitch that does two different actions with two very different speeds, instead of swoopy sweeper slider that is a very different pitch and easy to identify. Especially with a guy with command issues, if you can have a pitch that you just completely ignore and you can focus on one, that makes it much harder. So I think you're going to see that with the Rays, is that suddenly they're going to go full tunnel mode and just sort of give that universal target. Ben Whitelaw was talking about this, the universal target the Rays love to do, which is basically the catcher sets up middle every single time. One target to throw to. You're not moving around, less thinking on the pitcher, less worrying about command. You just throw to that and let your natural movement take it somewhere else. And he's an interesting experiment. This is not going to always go well, but he does add something that we were talking about. What were we saying, Brett? We wanted whiffs. Yeah. We need somebody that can throw a ball past a bat. And Guerra can get whiffs.
I think Guerra is that guy right now, which is, interesting acquisition to say the very least, right? But could be a guy that sticks around this time. And like we talked about last week's episode, the bullpen as a whole, yes, Pete Fairbanks might be the very best as long as he can feel his fingers.
Which that was a big scare. We had Fairbanks left in the middle of a close, a middle of a save attempt, and he didn't want to come out, but he did get pulled. And his command was starting to look, he was starting to only use the breaking balls instead of the fastball, which is like huge red flag. And then he comes out and you're like, oh God, this is it. Here it is. It's over. It's over. Where's my bleach? Let's go. But no, it turns out he has this interesting, it's not really a disorder. I don't know what it's not. It's like it's a thing. I guess and some people on Twitter were actually posting like, I have this too, and it sucks. And I'm like, I never heard of it. It's
Right. Renault's disease? Or Renault's
Renault's
syndrome?
disease or syndrome. Yeah, Renault's syndrome. Yeah, where you basically in cold weather, it's like a circulation thing where you basically
Right.
you get numbness in your fingers, lose control. But it's completely benign. Once you get those warm, you get your feeling again. But as a pitcher, not great to not have the feel, have numb fingers. And so because of that, if he's throwing like, I mean, it's a dangerous weapon. He could kill somebody. So it's probably good they pulled him. Um, Kevin Kelly came in, got the save, so that was awesome. But that's the very scary moments. But thankfully, something that I guess he's had for ever, and it's something that he knows about, and so they'll figure it out. Got to get some hot hands in the bullpen for late September Yankee games and Boston games.
Yeah, no, it definitely was scary though. Yandy Diaz also left with an injury, but came off the bench on Saturday, drew a couple of walks as he does.
In the same inning.
Yeah, scored a run. So he was fine. But maybe the plan was like Miguel Vargas's spring training plan, just don't
Don't
take the
swing.
bat off your shoulders.
Yeah.
And against the White Sox bullpen, I think that plan will work every single time. So
Work
I'm okay
well.
with it. Yeah, and the Rays are going to come out of this with another road series victory, and it just I know they lost 2 or 3 to the Astros. They got shut out twice. So if you look at the two teams that the Rays have lost series against, yes, those are the two teams. Probably the only two teams they've played thus far that you expect to see in the postseason. But they continue to just play really good baseball, bank a ton of wins, and yes, the bats went cold against a pretty good Astros team, the defending world champions. So you lose 2 or 3, not that big of a deal.
And again, it's you lose the rubber match 1-0. So like that,
Right.
anything could happen there. That was a really good pitching duel. Josh Fleming, in particular, we mentioned him as like an audition. He went toe to toe with Hunter Brown and shut down a very right-handed heavy Astros lineup. So that's a tough lineup and a tough matchup for Fleming, and he pitched it fantastically well. So I think when you look at okay, it's not great to lose the 2 series against the teams with winning records. Though Boston has a winning record against teams not named Tampa Bay Rays. So that's Boston's at least not bad. Like they're in the AL East, they're in last place, but they would be winning a lot of other divisions because the AL East is a ridiculous division. But like against Toronto, you had close losses. Against Houston, the offense went flat, but like that third game, anybody could win. 1-0 game literally is a bloop and a blast away from flipping the
Right.
script. So I don't think those losses make me think like, oh, well, the team is, a paper tiger. um, I mean, that's fine if fans want to think that, but like, again, this is a lot of wins and a lot of domination wins. So, including one each against Houston and Toronto as well. So,
Hmm. Yeah, no, they're not getting swept. They're doing just fine, and yeah, I'm just I'm waiting for the losing streak to start, the stretch where they lose 8 of 10. I'm waiting for that, and it'll come. But man,
May is going to be the big test, right? I think
right,
after May, on June 1st, there is no more questions
right,
anymore. Like there's no overarching questions.
right,
Health is a totally different thing. Like every team has health questions. If healthy. Again, we talk about this. It's like if Aaron Judge stays healthy. Well, like yeah, that's a big, like that is the Yankees are a totally different team if Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge miss the season. Same thing with the Rays, same thing with the Cardinals, same thing with the Dodgers, same thing with the Padres. Like I think I'm always like that's like sort of like we all get it. Everybody can say like if you're like this team is going to go all the way and they don't and it's because of huge injuries, I don't think anybody can be like, you were totally wrong. We know that. So after May, though, you'll know like kind of where this team sits. If they have a winning record, like if they have a winning month, I should say, they'll have a winning record. But like if they have a winning month against this lineup of teams, this team is, division and AL champ potential. Like that's the trajectory. They go 500, they're still very much like in that, they pretty much have a playoff spot almost locked up this early. Again, health, knock on wood. If they go like under 500 in the month of May, suddenly then maybe you do say like, okay, where they sit, there may be like a wild card squad. A lot of things, but this is the lineup for May. Pittsburgh, the Yankees, Baltimore, the Yankees again, the Mets, the Brewers, the Blue Jays, the Dodgers, and then the Cubs.
Okay.
Pretty good run. So all of those teams have winning records. And Pittsburgh has the best record of all of them. So fun fact, he gets started off with the best right off the bat. The Brewers and the Cubs are probably the weakest teams, but they also have really good pitching, and they've played well. They've been winning baseball games. So, like the Brewers had I think 5 losses or 6 losses just a couple days ago. The Cubs have also been a nice little surprise early on. So that's a full month. There's not a bad team in this group. So again, this will be like all the questions on June 1st. After May, there's not going to be this like, oh, man, is this team any good? Is this is it just because of the favorable schedule? We'll have had 1 month of very favorable, 1 month of very good. And then there you go. And then a few more months of baseball after that.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, we're not going to be breaking records, and we'll just be like a really good 97 win team. Who knows?
Yeah, I feel like I'm ready for that. Like we're done with the Maroons era of of the season. Now we're just into the like, okay, let's just win some ball games and let's see what, because I think you do need to have this test, at some point during the season, which is who do you count on in high leverage moments? Who do you count on for the big moments? Who do you maybe start to shift around? And it becomes exciting because now you're a month into the season. You do now have more data. So it's like, okay, what do you have in Luke Raley? Is this a guy you want to keep around? Is he a guy that we start to think maybe now's the time? When do you pull the trigger on Kyle Manzardo? I think Luke Raley's done enough so far, but those are the questions you start to have is like, once you get to mid-May, you then decide like, do we need another catcher? Do you need to replace this guy? Do you need more bullpen? Do you need a rotation member? And the most exciting thing of all of this is mid-May is the slotted return date for Tyler Glasnow. So
yes,
we have some exciting stuff coming up when the return of Glass Nasty.
I mean, I don't want to say ahead of schedule yet because, like, you hear mid May return, and then that might mean he heads on his rehab assignment and he's there for like 2 weeks, and then they bring him back. So it could be very much like into June before we see him in the big leagues. But just great news to hear Tyler Glasnow throwing again, throwing with some higher intensity again, and yeah, you add a guy who is arguably, I think, goes into the same category as Jacob DeGrom, who hit the IL again today.
Yeah,
Um,
horrible. Horrible.
when they're healthy, and neither of them have proven to ever be that, when they are healthy, two of the top, well, DeGrom's the top right-handed pitcher in baseball, and I'd put Glasnow in that top 5. And so you add that to a
Absolutely.
team that is just the best team in baseball by far, in terms of how they've played so far this year. That seems like a cheat code, but it's great news, and just he's got to stay healthy into the postseason.
exactly. And now, but to follow up on what you were saying though, uh, his next step apparently. So he did a 2 inning live BP session at the Trop today. Very encouraging. Next step is a 3 inning outing in Durham sometime next week. If he starts throwing in Durham, that does target
Okay.
May in the majors.
Okay.
Now, again, there can be setbacks. They can be if his pitch shape's not right, if things like that, you don't rush it. But like he's going to be throwing 3 innings for the Durham Bulls, which means the next time out he can be throwing 4 to 5. The next time out it's a full slate, and then next time out maybe it's a Tropicana field. So it is well in line, if all things go well, of a mid-May return of the champ. Now, again, this is one of those things where the Rays are going to be, they can be super cautious, and they can just be really smart about this. No reason to do any shortcuts. You have plenty of cushion, and that if you have a 4-game losing streak, you do not need to panic and bring up Tyler Glasnow. You want Tyler Glasnow for late July, for August, the stretch run in September, and then deep into October. So you give him enough time. But I know Tyler Glasnow is itching to get back out there. This must have been so impossibly hard for somebody as competitive as he is to be sitting around and missing all of this fun and winning and not being out there. So I know he's going to be eager to get back, and I just cannot wait to see him pitch again.
Yeah, no, it's going to be great. If it comes in a series against an opponent like the Yankees, it might, you might be able to get to watch from the upper deck, because the Rays are doing that, which I think is a good thing, right? I've had very mixed feelings about the closings of the upper deck. It felt weird, right, to go to a game and like, oh, there's all those seats and they're just covered up. And you always had the tarps all the way at the top of the upper deck, but it's been closed now for a few years. The Rays are opening up some sections, though, for this series against the Yankees. But with that has come some debate over the cost of the tickets. And Darby, I know you were more vocal about this on Twitter, but I mean, what is it, like $40 just to go to a Rays Yankees game?
$39 for the cheapest tickets. Yeah, for the upper deck. Yeah, so okay, this is where it's like I cannot help myself. I have to like jump in and take a big old swing at the hornet's nest every single time. And I know it's not smart or good to do this, but like I just can't help it. And it frustrates me because I don't want Rays fans to get a perception of being this very insular, sheltered bubble fandom that doesn't understand how the real world works. And I'll say this, right? If you want to complain about higher price tickets and sort of price gouging in a lot of ways in general, and if you want to talk about fees and Ticketmaster, I'm not going to defend any of that. It's garbage. Guess what? We are living in a capitalistic society, and that's how things work. Is when the supply becomes higher, or when the demand is there, the supply suddenly gets more expensive. That's how things work. You saw that with eggs. You see it with gas. You see it with every company that decides, hey, this is an opportunity. People want my product. Will you buy it for this much? Well, how about this much? Let's just keep raising it up. So I'm not going to defend garbage like that, but guess what? This is small potatoes, everybody. This is insane. The Yankees are the premier ticket pretty much in baseball. I'll admit that, right? Like I don't want the fans to get a bigger head than they already have, but they are. They are a prestige team that has fandom everywhere.
And you've been, I'm assuming you've been to a Yankees Rays game at the Trop.
It's electric, obviously, and there's a lot of Yankee fans
There's a lot of Yankees fans.
there's
Like,
a lot of New Yorkers in Florida.
there's no hiding it.
There's a lot of Yankee fans at Marlins games
Yeah.
in Miami. I've been to the Old Pro Player, and that they traveled well there.
To be fair, there's a lot of Yankee fans all over the country. I think it's the same way. Like, you look at the Bucks, who have now won a Super Bowl in recent years. Go to a Bucks Cowboys game in Tampa. Go to a Bucks Packers game, Bucks Giants game. Like, there's no hiding. Like, this Florida is still very much like a transplant state, and the Yankees fans sometimes outnumber Rays fans at the Trop.
It's true. Yeah. And so what you have happen here is that you're going to spend more on weekend games than weekday games because the weekend is when people are off. So there's more people wanting to go to a baseball game than there are on a Tuesday. So you have that factor. You then have the Yankees, which you have a lot of local fans that you want to get their money because you only have a few days a year that get their money. Plus, it's a big rivalry. It's division rivalry. It's prestige players. It's the MVP of the league. It's the guy
breaker.
Yeah. It's like, so that's another. So you have both of these dual multipliers adding up, and you're complaining that they're opening up tickets because it's sold out in the lower bowl for $39 and $49 for, I guess, a better viewscape at like closer in. Hey, have the people complaining about this? What other sporting events have you been to? I want to know. Because people are talking about this. Somebody mentioned on Twitter that like you can go to a Yankees game for cheaper. No, you can't. You can't though. Like you're wrong. And you're wrong because like maybe you can get a standing room ticket during the week to the Royals. You can't do it against the Red Sox, against the Blue Jays with good viewing seats. Like it's going to be more. It might be similar pricing, but it's going to be more. And it's going to be even taller because their stadium has much more capacity. Like you're wrong. And you look stupid when you say that. Like you look like you just are like only going to Tampa Bay Rays games in Tropicana Field. Like look at the price of hockey. They have half the games that baseball does. So the prices are always going to be 50, 60, 70, $80. Like that's just the way it goes. Football, even fewer games, even higher prices. The demand is higher. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't want to have to defend a billionaire pricing tickets more expensive than they normally would. But it's also like, why are we fighting about $39 tickets? Like, if you want to do that, then like be radicalized and damn the man and bring it down. But like, can we like, let's attack like big pharma like that? Like, if you want to talk about price gouging, if you want to talk about this thing, like let's really concentrate our efforts into something bigger, broader, and more impactful than a fairly elevated price, but a fairly smart one because you're adding tickets that weren't in existence because you now opened it up for a special event because it was sold out and there's much higher demand. I don't know, man. Like it's not that crazy. Like I've been to a lot of baseball games around the league, and there's going to be, I think here's the biggest thing that people are they're totally right about. And it's something that will happen with a new stadium. You need more standing room or party deck areas that are not seats, that are maybe obstructed views, but they're cheaper. And I think there's a lot of new modern stadiums that have extra space to go hang out, to drink, to have fun, but you're like on a rail and there's no seat to be found. And you can get in for like $10-15. Like you can get those tickets. That I think is fine. I want those to be available. But that's the thing this year. The Rays are offering that. There's the cheaper season ticket offers. There's the Randyland offers. There's standing room offers. If you're getting a seat, if you're getting good pricing, if you're getting good locations, it's going to be for more money. That's just that you're not going to get like the lower bowl in Seattle or in San Diego or in St. Louis or in Kansas City for the price of a standing room ticket. Like, you can't compare the two. And you can't compare interdivision rivalries. You can't compare Saturdays to weekdays versus out of division, out of even the league. Like, it's just silly. It's silly, and we get this every single time when it's like the Rays don't care about getting fans in there because they priced a premier ticket at a fairly premier rate, but not exorbitant rate, just a higher elevated than normal.
You know what's going to happen to those tickets, Darby?
What's going to happen, Brett?
They're going to be sold.
Oh
People will
yeah, oh
buy these
yeah,
tickets, and it'll be
absolutely.
a great atmosphere at the Trop. And I think
Well,
this year it's going to be a lot more Rays fans. Like, I think there's that interest, and you've seen that in the attendance numbers.
we saw that with Boston series. The Boston series again is a very similar. A lot of transplants from the Northeast, from New England, and you have a lot of Boston fandom that usually fills the Trop, and it becomes like a 50-50 sometimes, or even sometimes 60-40 for Boston. This time around, not the case, not at all. And of course, the Rays didn't really give Boston a lot of room to celebrate, or much to celebrate for, but it was overwhelming and loud for Tampa. So I'm excited. I hope you're right. I think this is going to be a fairly rowdy uh Tampa Bay leaning
Mhm.
crowd.
Well, we'll see. We'll see if the Rays can keep it up. They've got one more game against the White Sox. A 4-game road sweep would be something else. And who do we send to the mound? I
Drew
honestly don't know.
Rasmussen.
Drew Rasmussen. So
Yeah.
then an off day, and then the Pirates. We get to. I'm really excited. The Pirates have been really fun to watch this year, and so excited to see how they match up against the Rays. Unfortunately, like you said, we won't see G. Choi, but there's a bunch of other fun players. Maybe I don't think I think we'll miss Rich Hill by a day or two.
No, Dick
Um,
Mountain.
yeah, we'll miss him.
Yeah,
Andrew
he went
Jackson.
today. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Could be on the Thursday.
Okay.
Maybe if they're on a five, I don't know if he's on the, I don't know what his kind of schedule, but if he's on a normal 5-day starter schedule, to tie it back to the beginning, look at this. Woo, we've made it. We would get old man Rich Hill.
Well, Darby, I think we've covered it all. It's fun doing these weekly, but there's only so much news to go through, and I think we covered it all today. Um, yeah, any final thoughts?
Uh it the capper of the month happens tomorrow. When you listen to this today, or it already happened. This was one of the most magical months in Rays baseball history. Probably it is the most magical month in Rays baseball history. At least for regular season. This was an incredible run, an absolutely incredible run with so much excitement. And to do it, I think if this happened in May or in June, it would be amazing. But the fact that it kicks off this season, it's just so much more magical because it's setting up this whole. We have so much more baseball to go, but we are starting at such a fun high that this ride is just kind of getting started. And what a way to kick off this year. 23-5 tomorrow with a chance to go 24-5. Insane.
An unreal
And if they
month.
fall to a 23-6, that's also pretty impressive too. That's not going to put too much of a damper. So what an amazing first month of baseball.
Definitely, definitely, and we'll hope it continues into May and as the season goes on. But yeah, it's been a ton of fun and an easy team to talk about. It would give us more content though if they lost a couple here and there. We could question some managerial decisions. We
We'll just
could,
get real nitpicky in May, hopefully. A lot of wins, and then just be like,
yeah.
I don't know, that Taylor Walls bunt though, when they were up 9-2. It just, bunting really does lower the value of the win probability from 99.9% to about 99.98 repeating. So like I don't know what Cash is doing there. Was that his own plan? Did he miss a signal? Yeah, we'll just get super pedantic. I
I love
think
it.
that's my hope.
I
Lots
love
of
it.
wins and real pedantic podcasting.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Raise Your Voice. If you like what we do, if you're already followed this podcast feed, stay with us. If not, every new episode will be downloaded directly to your device. Make sure to follow us on Twitter. I'm at BG Rutherford 99. Darby's at Darby_Robinson. And make sure to keep checking out draysbay.com. Tons of great Rays content. And we'll continue to be the home of this podcast even after we have joined the Fans First Sports Network. So that's going to do it. We'll talk to you guys next week.